What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Anime Princess, and today we're doing a deep dive on the crit-based CI Spark Trickster, particularly going into how to gear the character for some pinnacle type content. For those of you who haven't been keeping up with the Twitch stream, what we've been doing lately is trying to level our Trickster to 100 while simultaneously doing very rippy, difficult content. And the content I've chosen to benchmark our build on is Simulacrum 30s. So far, we've gotten to level 99 doing strictly Simulacrum 30. I think I can get to 100 doing this, but it's a lot of grinding, and I don't know if I'm all for that. So we're just going to put out the video right now, and we might hit 100 on stream, or I might move on to something else. We'll see. Anyways, this is going to be a technical video, so let's just hop right into POB and take a look. A quick look at the POB shows us with a low end hit DPS of roughly 11 million and a high end of 43.5 million, which is good enough to do all content in the game. As for the defensive values, they're all pretty well balanced over here. If you want a more accurate representation, we could turn off Immortal Claw cast for damage taken. The numbers are still very respectable. In fact, these values, they are not being changed with the Ghost Dance, although this Ghost Dance is providing a massive layer of defensive value for us. We're sitting at 7,000 energy shield with Overleech, which means if we don't get one shot, the Overleech is going to spike us back up in almost an instantaneous fashion. And with Ghost Dance, the first 3 hits that we take are going to heal us for roughly 2,000 energy shield because of our high evasion rating. And this essentially gives us an ES pool of 9,000 instead of 7,000 for most of the game, because we're unlikely to get hit more than 3 times in rapid succession. And these replenish. So defensively, we are quite sound. As for Simulacrum in particular, one thing I like to do is I like to go for the Mark Mastery. Marked enemy cannot deal critical strikes, and we'll put this on Omniphobia as soon as he spawns, because that guy is pretty crazy. And Simulacrum in general has really insane crits. So, you know, if you just put your mark on Kosis, Omniphobia, you should be good for crits in there, because our defensive values are pretty high for everything else. And the reason we can do this is because we're getting Frenzy, Power, and Endurance Charge on the Grand Spectrums, so I don't need to go for Frenzy Charges over here. In fact, all our jewels are unique, and they all serve a really good purpose, except for one, which is just a rare jewel that gives us Corrupted Blood. So yeah, our tree's pretty set in terms of jewels. We're using Ancestral Vision because we're spell suppress capped, and this gives us ailment immunity. Ailment immunity is very strong in Simulacrum as well. We have a pretty juicy jewel combination in Unnatural Instinct paired with a Militant Faith. The Unnatural Instinct is good on its own. It gives us a bunch of movement speed, cast speed, spell damage. In this league, you can even tattoo something over here to get whatever you want from the tattoo. As for the Militant Faith, this gives us 2 bonuses based on how much devotion we have. I chose to get the reduced mana cost of skills bonus, as well as the increased elemental damage bonus. And to get devotion, you need to allocate nodes in this big area. So we have a bunch of stuff allocated down here. However, the Unnatural Instinct allocates everything that is unallocated. So this is just everything in this area over here in the middle, the Venn diagram. This is all allocated now. So we're getting a ton of devotion. We go from 80 all the way up to 175 just by having Unnatural Instinct here. So this is giving us a ton of reduced mana cost and a ton of increased LE damage. And if you choose a Militant Faith that is high Templar Dominus, it will convert this node into something great as well. Inner Conviction, which gives us, you know, we go from 10 million to almost 11 million for the minimum. And the downside of this is you gain power charges instead of frenzy charges. However, we're overcoming this downside by using the Grand Spectrum that gives us minimum frenzy charges, because this is not frenzy charge generation. It's just we always have 3 minimum. So we are still able to have power charges and frenzy charges while getting this really powerful keystone. When you are shopping for your Militant Faith, you need to be careful which number it has, because the number will randomly change these large nodes, reflexes, exceptional performance, and sentinel, and you really don't want to change reflexes and exceptional performance because those are huge nodes for us. We are going out of our way to grab these. For sentinel, this is a pretty strong node. However, some of the nodes that you could possibly get are even stronger than this. So if you really want to min-max, you could look for this node to get bumped up to something better. My particular Militant Faith does not change anything. And honestly, if yours doesn't change anything, you should be really happy as well, because this is strong as long as it doesn't brick these two nodes. I don't want to spend this whole video going over the passive tree. I think we've covered the important bits. You can just copy the rest using the path of building file. Let's move on to Flasks. So we will touch on the relative budget flask when we don't have a Mageblood, as well as your options when you do have Mageblood. And I'm not using a Mageblood, so let's just go over my current flasks first. I like the Explode Flask Oriath End for a few reasons. First off, I'm coming from an Explode build in my Spark Inquisitor, so I really like that extra clear that Explode provides. And if you are doing mapping, the Bismuth Flask is quite handy because you'll likely have the altars which reduce resistances, and this can help boost you back up. As a Trickster CI build, we're really tight on the suffixes, so it's hard to overcap resistances unless you have a Mageblood. This kind of helps with that. Next up is Taste of Hate. This is purely defensive, where we are taking fizz damage as cold. Now, you could swap this with a silver flask. In fact, this is what I was using for most of the time while mapping until I hit boots that gave me Onslaught on Kill. Now, Onslaught on Kill is not as good as Onslaught Flask when you're doing bosses. However, I am sticking to mapping and Simulacrum type content, so for me, it just made sense. Get the extra defensive boost of a Taste of Hate. For the next flask, Quicksilver, we're getting 60% increased evasion rating on that one. And then, since we are crit based, I'm trying to grab some crit wherever I can. So we have Diamond Flask. Cast speed is by far the most damage you can get on a flask suffix, so that's what we have here. And we round things out with a Bottled Faith. This is just massive damage here. If you wanted to be slightly more defensive, especially if you have a Mageblood, I would suggest going with Ruby, Topaz, and then either a Sapphire that's magic, or just use Taste of Hate. However, I might actually lean towards a Sapphire because Mageblood has 4 magic flasks, 1 unique flask. I would probably prefer Bottled Faith for bossing, Oriath End for mapping, for the 1 unique flask we're going to use. So for Mageblood players, these really boost your defenses through the roof. Keep in mind, I did hit level 99 without using these flasks, so the build is still very defensively sound, but these will solve all your suffix problems so you can get more damage on your suffixes. And the Mageblood combined with the less damage taken for all the elements is very, very powerful. As for Mageblood suffixes, obviously you're going to want cast speed because that's the most damage you could get. Reduced mana cost of spells is tempting. Now this also solves it, but it would open up different options. So it's an option, reduced mana cost of skills. Another Mageblood option for suffixes would be, well, you'd probably want the increased evasion rating. Then for your 4th one, well, crit chance if you need it. I don't know if that's necessarily the best. Maybe you'd actually drop, you probably wouldn't even use the Diamond Flask. So you might want to get crit chance for your 4th suffix, and then you could go with Silver Flask because the Onslaught effect gets amplified by the Mageblood. So this would be pretty good setup here. And then you might not even need to have a Quicksilver because you're going to get like increased effect of Onslaught, so it'll sort of make do for it. And if you don't care too much about being just absolutely immortal, obviously these flasks aren't necessary. You could go with just a suffix that gives you 40 to all res, and then you could go with, like this. Yeah, I mean that there's so many options. Now I'm not using a jade flask, even though we are evasion based, just because there's so many good flasks to use. I decided to drop that. You could opt for one if you wanted to. I feel like it's important to mention that arguably one of the top 2 PoE players in the world, Ben, is also playing a very similar build in hardcore. Now he's playing a non-crit version, which is way more tanky. We're still extremely tanky, but he really goes for almost invincibility, and he's using a Mageblood, so his build is very, very tanky. I have been following along with what he's been doing. It has helped me make my build better, and I think it's probably worth you guys spending the time to look at his YouTube videos as well. So you can find that in the description. Onto the gearing and gem changes. We have made some changes since the crit Trickster build guide, and these do go along with the theme of trying to make the build more resilient as well as have more DPS for pinnacle content such as Uber Bosses and Simulacrum 30. The first thing I want to talk about is the gloves. We dropped Algor Mortis for a pair of rare gloves because these will help us have more damage for Simulacrum 30, because previously a lot of the damage was tied up for enemies standing on Vortex. So we no longer use Vortex. As you can see, there's no Vortex on left click, which means our damage is going to do a lot of damage even if they're off screen. Very, very good for killing those tanky monsters in Simulacrum, as well as just in general. This is just a great upgrade in general. Now, Ben does have a brief video showing him crafting this. I'll probably put up my own crafting guide where I go into the process. We were looking for cast speed while focused. So this gives us 50% cast speed. Focus has uptime of 4 seconds, downtime of 8 seconds. So this is really a steroid to burst down stuff, but it is a ton of damage when it's up. We also get damage while leeching, which is nice. We are always leeching even at full energy shield because of overleech. As for the gem setups, these are obviously going to change. We dropped the whole vortex, and maybe we should look into POB to better illustrate this. So, Immortal Call, cast with damage taken, pretty standard. We also have Frost Shield. Again, this is to help crit cap. For Spark, I'm no longer using Pinpoint because in these pinnacle encounters, you are just moving around too much. I don't think it's going to be very good damage. Also, especially for Simulacrum, you do want to have as much pen as possible. So Awakened Lightning Pen starts to make a lot of sense. This also has the bonus of inflicting exposure. So we're no longer using Pinpoint. We're using Awakened Lightning Pen. Everything else has stayed the same. Now I have an Enhance matched with Conductivity, Blood and Sand, Flame Dash. Enhance boost all of these things. I'm not using a shield charge because I don't have slots. So having the extra quality on Flame Dash to give us the charges back faster is very nice. Alt quality Conductivity does a lot, so enhancing that quality is quite nice. See, it's 10.6 all the way to 10.8. And Blood and Sand obviously is the main reason why we're using Enhance, because we want as much prog speed as possible. Now, we do have a 3 curse. No, actually, this is a 3 curse with Arcanist Brand, and then we are self-casting the Conductivity. And this is easy to sustain this mana cost because we are using the Militant Faith. The Militant Faith reducing mana cost so much also allows us to throw in Zealotry on a Divine Blessing. A Divine Blessing and Inspiration are both the alt quality to help reduce Zealotry's mana cost. If we look in game, this only costs 54 mana, and we press this for a massive spike in damage. You only have to press this once every 21 seconds, so it's really easy to do. We basically have full uptime on an extra aura because we're using the Militant Faith tech. And you could also just use a Mageblood with reduced mana cost and it would have the same effect. So either or. So for our auras, I have switched to some alt qualities just to squeeze out a little bit more damage. I'm still on an Enlightened 3 and that's perfectly fine. So those are the gem links. The main change is with the glove. I don't think I changed anything else. If you are using a Mageblood, you may not need to go evasion bases everywhere. So the reason why I'm using evasion, glove, boot, and helmet is because my resistances are really tight. I need all my suffixes to give me Res, and that means I want to take advantage of having 15 spell suppress over here. But technically speaking, it's probably smarter if you're able to Res cap while also getting more spell suppress in the suffix to opt for some pure energy shield bases. But again, this is just like super min maxing. I don't think it's necessary. Perfectly happy with my ES pool. Very happy with my evasion as well. But these are some things to consider if you really just want to dump a lot of currency into this. All right, this about wraps things up. If this is your first video on CI Trickster, do keep in mind this is sort of a sister piece to the main CI Crit Spark build guide that I released around a week ago. So you might want to go back and watch that for like full context. As for everyone else, hope you enjoyed the journey. I had a ton of fun playing Spark Trickster. It was really fun gearing it up, swapping over to Crit, and farming all those simulacrums. This might be the end of the line in terms of deep dive upgrades. I'm not sure if I'm going to want to push into Mageblood level upgrades. We sort of touched on what you can do with Mageblood in this video, so I hope that helps you guys out. Looking forward, probably we'll put out some more Spark content, generic crafting videos. I'm not too sure yet. We'll also be looking at potentially rolling another character. Anyways, that's the end of this build guide. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one.